young Phil, that you leave a wall blank for any more that. Oh yeah, inside, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
But
what in my direct vision every day.
so 23 platinum, it's 39 gold, 52 silver. You've got 5 Ivor Novello awards. All that kind of accolade. I'm sure it's a huge kick to you. But are there other things that you sort of rate yourself by? I don't know whether you sort of feel when you see people sing your song still, when you, I don't know if there's things that you kind of feel, okay, I'm definitely doing the right thing here. I've got.
Well, in terms of the awards, what's the most important one? Well, for me, the most significant thing is that it starts at 1967, which is probably compared
Right.
to last year. That's to me what's if I've got anything to be happy about, I'll be proud of. That's the part. In fact, I was being interviewed just a few weeks ago by an American radio station. The guy, Mr. Coulter. What do you think your greatest achievement is in the music industry for 56 years? I said, my greatest achievement is to be still in the music business after 56 years, and that's I genuinely believe that. I mean, it's just sticking the pace is what's really the that's the yardstick, you know. And again, it's the same songs. People ask me, what's your definition? The same guy asked me, could I have a short definition of a great song? I said, I'll do better than that. I said, I'll give you a one-word definition of a great song: longevity.
Yeah.
Simple as that. The song's been around for 40, 50 years. It's a great song.
So when you're writing stuff like Ten I Love So Well and you know, Congratulations works and Puppet on a String and with This Boy that Elvis had a hit with, are you aware at the time that your hope that this is going to be a forever song, or do you, I don't know when that kicks into
No, you never know. You never
Right.
know. All you can do is hope. You know, you can hope. And there's different kinds of criteria for like Puppet on a String or the Bay City Rollers and like the Town I Love So Well. I mean, my training in the early days was in Denmark Street, Tin Pan Alley, where I was learning my craft.
Right.
And I emphasize that it is a craft.
Yeah.
You know, there's no such thing, in my estimation, there's no such thing as a born songwriter. You know, you're born with some tools. You might have an ear for music, a bit of a flair for language, but then you have to learn the craft. You know how to structure a song, the beginning, middle, end, and how to say it in as concise a way as possible. It's that sort of thing about economy. Every writer's got to learn that. So I did 3 years as a contract writer in Denmark Street, exactly doing that, producing. The contract asked for 6 new songs every second Friday. Wow. That's 3 songs a week finished. Music, words, and arrangement for the little house band. That's learning the craft. That's all about trying to get, you know, the 3-minute pop song that's geared to the charts. So taking a step sideways from that, I was fortunate that I was able to work with the likes of the Dubliners, the Fury Brothers, Liam Clancy, Paddy Riley, all of that. Because in that world, it's not hit driven. You know, with the Dubliners, I wasn't trying to get records in the charts.
Yeah.
So a song like Score Not His Simplicity, nothing to do with the charts.
Right.
The Town I Love So Well, nothing to do with the charts. And the irony is, the funny thing is that after all these years, those are 2 of the songs that have endured. Those are 2 of the songs which are most important to me.
Right.
Because why? Well, because there's an integrity about them, there's an honesty about them, and there's a kind of, I suppose, it's a kind of autobiographical.
Yeah.
They were never meant to be hits. But when you ask that question, how do you know that a song has got like legs? In the case of the Town I Love So Well, there was a moment. You were asking, does it happen early on as you're writing the song? Well, the story of that, and I've told this many times, you'll forgive me for telling it again, that the Town I Love So Well came about after the shit hit the fan in Derry. And going back there to visit family and friends, and just seeing that pall of gloom that was descending on the city over that period, and I thought, this is historical things are happening in my town, and it should be chronicled in a song. And my first attempt was when I happened to be in Derry visiting family on the weekend that Internment was introduced, and I shared in that feeling in Derry that the town had been violated. You know, we really felt that the paratroopers, the British Army had gone in there. They were dragging guys out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning for no better reason than that they played Ga, or that they played Irish music, or they were seen to be like, you know, nationalist. But there were guys who were at school with me who were no more like troublemaker, no more like paramilitaries than I was, but they were dragged out of bed at 4 o'clock. So that was what was going on up there. And that kind of festered. I wrote the first song was Free the People, an anti-internment song. The very fact that it was anti-anything tells you that it wasn't a great song. It was a knee-jerk reaction. But what it did, it was my first attempt to write a political song, you know, addressing like actual, you know, what was going on the grounds in Derry. That kind of got my head into that space. And it was, then I started thinking about a serious song. I knew that Free the People was a kind of an instant reaction. Now, Kelly loved it, of course, and we recorded within days, and it was in the charts within weeks. But I knew there was something better to be said. The Town I Love So Well was the next step. That took months. Why? Well, I'd written the tune, I suppose, within the first couple of weeks, but then just tweaking the lyric and being very aware of the fact that a few wrong chosen words in a highly volatile situation as it was up in the north would just tip that song over to being a rebel song. And the last thing we needed at any stage is another rebel song. So I had to be very careful about how I would pick the words. I went back and over again and reworked the lyric, tweaked, put songs out, shifted words about, binned other takes, until finally I got what I thought, this is as good as it's going to get. Now, get back to the point of the whole thing. When did I realise there was something special going on? The place was a rather ordinary flock wallpaper bedroom in a 3-star hotel in Sheffield when the Dubliners were on tour. It was like early afternoon when Kelly had just got out of bed, and I had asked him to come down to my room because I had a song that I wanted to hear. He sat in one of the twin beds, I sat in the other with my guitar. The rain was battered outside, and we could look and see like the railway station. Was all of that, you know. This was not like a glamorous location. And I sang the Town I Love So Well with my eyes closed, because I was aware that this was a big, you know, this was like there's 5 verses, there's a lot of words, and I'm dealing with some pretty controversial stuff. And I didn't want, I deliberately had my eyes closed because I didn't want to see Kelly's reaction early on if he didn't like it. Because trust me, if Kelly didn't like it, Kelly had an encyclopedic knowledge of folk music. So if he didn't like this song, and he was very politically aware, of course, if he didn't like this song, he would have been the first to say, Phil, that's a load of shit. He would right there and then he would have said it. So I didn't want to be thrown off track by catching any of his reaction until it was over. So I'm playing the guitar and I go, I can only play for Bright Brown Day in the Town I Love. So deal. Then I opened my eyes and looked at Kelly, who's right over there, and there were tears in his eyes.
Wow.
That's the moment, right there. I mean, there were many other times, like when I heard him sing it for the first time in the Royal Albert Hall, when I heard it sung by marchers at a civil rights march, I mean, there are many other times when the song has given me kind of goosebumps. That was the moment, right there, before anybody else had heard it.
Before we go back to Kelly, I know that he said at one point, "You're not a genius. You're a brilliant craftsperson. That you know how to make." And that's typical him, keeping your feet on the ground and making sure that you realise this is a skill and that you have to work on it and you have to. But I know that you also, when you were performing the Town I Love So Well, I think it was in Derry. Bomb goes off, you keep playing, another bomb goes off, and there's a shout to basically stop the gig. And you see the man who's going to rescue you from all this mayhem makes his way across this madness. And what does he say to you as he you thought you were being rescued?
At this stage, I'm under the piano because I'd seen all the smart boys in Derry get themselves under tables. I thought this is obviously what to do. No, it wasn't the Town I Love So Well. It was actually Danny Boy. I was playing instrumentally at the final of the Phil Coulter talent contest. With some luminaries in the judging panel. Now the guy, everybody's making for the exit, and I'm wondering how I'm going to escape. And he comes, John Wayne fashion, you know, like the old movies, on his belly. Right comes right up onto the stage and comes underneath the piano, joins me under the piano, and then, I mean, I'm taken aback by that. I'm expecting a guy in a high-vis jacket to come and rescue me, but this guy comes and then he produces a pen and a piece of paper and asks me for Billy Connolly's autograph. That's keeping your feet on the ground.
That idea too, that you know, you're a one-man brill building, and young Martin was with you, of course, making a lot of those songs, and then you make the shift of gear into releasing your own albums with the Tranquility series, and they're hugely successful. I'm guessing I worked in Golden Discs at the time, and they just sold every day.
It was a phenomenon. It took everybody by surprise, especially me.
It's like Enya before Enya figured out how to do this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it came to me, again, the start of all of that process. I have a house I did then have a house up in Donegal, and we were spending Christmas up there. We were having some American friends, American guests who were coming to visit. So as I'm getting in the drink for the parties and the logs for the fire and the grub for the dinner, I thought, what would be really nice here? Music, bit of music on in the background, Irish music, but instrumental, and not the chieftains or not like Katie Band, something like just nice
full on diddly eye.
yeah, none of that. And I thought, but nice, just classy sort of Irish. Great if I can get orchestral stuff. And when I looked around, sure, there was kind of the RT Concert Orchestra had made records, but they were all very. I mean, I don't need to tell you what they were. They were all very square.
Yeah.
Not at all what I had in mind. So I thought, Jesus, this doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So there's a gap. And so when later on that year, I produced an album of Joe Dolan for KTEL, who were the they were the television advertising guys, and got friendly with the guys, etc. I was asked to sit in on the TV edit of the TV commercial in London with one of the bosses in KTEL, Jack McNeice. And I asked him about the whole process. I said, "You advertise this? Yeah, in Ireland. Joe will go on television in Ireland. Blah 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 blah. It's always effective. We get a campaign." And I said, "Jack, I have an idea which might just work. With a television campaign. It's an orchestral kind of piano and orchestra, just playing big Irish melodies. Not to be carried away by all the orchestral stuff, but just the tunes will be the start. Would you guys be interested in that?" So we were in a trattoria in Soho, where all those film edit suites are. And I tell you how long ago it was that Jack says, "Give me a second," and he had to go out to the route of the gents' toilet out in the hall to get the payphone, and he calls Brendan Harvey of KTEL to pitch it to him, and he comes back in to me and says, "Harvey's on the phone and wants to talk to you." So in a hallway of a small trattoria off of Greek Street in Soho, I do a pitch to Brendan Harvey. He says, "Great idea, Phil." He said, "But this is like, we need to be it for Christmas and it's already October. I don't know if we left it a bit too late." I said, "I like the idea, but it's a bit late." He said, "Sure, how long would it take you to deliver that?" I said, "If you can commit to a TV campaign, I'll deliver it in 2 weeks."
Boom.
He said, "In 2 weeks?" I said, "Yeah, I'll deliver it in 2 weeks, the whole 9 yards, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
I know how to go flat out. I'll work long hours. I have all the right personnel. I can do the arrangements late at night." He said, "Okay, if you deliver that." Then he put the phone down and he started booking television slots.
Wow.
So I delivered the album 2 weeks later.
It must have been a shock, though, for all of you that
for all
it
of us.
took off the way it did,
For all of
because
us.
it was just one of the great big sellers of and not only that year, it continued on and it kept. And
Yeah,
then
that was classic Tranquility, which is then that was a phenomenon. Took everybody by surprise, as I say, especially me. Then the challenge is, of course, how do you follow that up? As you well know, the highway of the music business is littered with the carcasses of one-hit wonders, and I didn't want to be one of them. So I thought follow-up is always the big challenge.
Difficult
for a
second
veteran
album,
like me.
yeah.
I know this is the challenge. So the temptation and the follow-up was, now this was a huge hit, classic Tranquility. Let's go into Abbey Road and do, get the full like London Symphony Orchestra and really go all out here. I said, no, that'd be wrong. Whatever magic was in that first album, and it was done in an ordinary studio in a very unfashionable part of London, on a tight budget. I thought, whatever happened in that first album, I have to try and recreate it, and we're not going to get that in Abbey Road with the London Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah.
We'll go back to what we did before. Same guys, same small orchestra.
keep it in Sun Studios, so you want that feel.
Yeah, exactly. It's what we did, and to our great delight, Sea of Tranquility outsold classic Tranquility. Sea of Tranquility was the bigger seller.
Yeah.
So proving to us that we had, arrived at something. And following the heels of that, then I'm getting phone calls from the likes of Jim Hand and the promoters saying, you got to tour this, you got to go out and do gigs. And I said, look, that's not what I do. It's not what I do. And if I were to go out, it would have to be done properly, with a proper orchestra, proper sound, proper lights, or let's just leave it, because I don't want to tarnish this now, because this has been very glossy and it has worked.
Yeah.
So then a certain Maurice Cassidy, whom I know from Derry, who's now the Riverdance promoter, he said, listen, Coulter, I think you should do this. But before I said anything, he said, if you're going to do it, it'll have to be done properly. We'll have to do it with the orchestra, with the sound, with the light. I said, that's exactly my tune. So that's how it happened. That turned me into from being a songwriter, record producer, orchestrator, whatever.
And did you enjoy that sort of feeling of people would have known you, and certainly in the industry you would have been very well known, but now you're the face on the
Totally
poster
different.
and
Big, that's what I learned. It's a big difference. You people may have awareness of your name, etc. But once you step onto the stage, once you become the performer, it's a different world. It's a different set of priorities, different set of rules. And you have to learn that. You have to learn a whole. I had to learn a whole. I mean, all of those years where I would have been maybe producing, the likes of Billy Connolly or whatever, on the Bay City Road, and standing side or playing with Van Morrison. Not that I didn't have experience on stage, but I never wanted to be like. It wasn't as if, there are performers. There's two groups of performers. They're the Robbie Williams, born to sing, born to dance kind.
Yeah.
But there's the guys who fall into it by accident. I'm one of the accidents. I fell into it by accident. But I'm smart enough to know if I'm going to do this, I've got to do it right. And you watch and you learn.
Now we should say the tour is called 410. I'm trying to figure out the 90 because you're going to be 82.
4 score and then.
Oh, there you go. 4 score and then. But I should say that you're going to be 82 on February 19th.
Yeah.
You'll be celebrating 60 years next year, which is crazy.
Sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah, because I know when you released your autobiography in 2019, it was 55 years at that point when you had Broken Never Bruised. There's always a feeling when people have a huge career like that, and especially when they wrap it all up in a book, even for themselves, there's a kind of a thing, am I living in the footnotes now? Or because you're very, very active and you're still doing exactly what you love.
Yeah.
But it must have been a surreal thing to wrap your life up into one book that you can say, this is me, this is what I've done.
There was more to that than I ever thought there was going to be. I'd been kicking the can down the road on that for some time. I mean, I'd been approached by publishers, but I thought, I'll get around to doing that eventually. And funny enough, it was Dunphy, who's a pal of mine, says, typical Dunphy fashion, Philo, you better start working on this while you can still remember shit. that was Dunphy.
Eamon Dunphy does tend to have a bit of insight into this.
Oh yeah, I mean, I took his word. But the other thing he said to me, and let me tell you this, it's hard work. It's hard work. You see, when I was working on my books, I would be up at 4:30 in the morning. I'd give myself like 4 hours undisturbed at the book before I do any of my other chores. So he said, you better be prepared for locking yourself away, and which I did. We have a little place down in Spain, and I went down like away from phones, and I couldn't have written it here. There was too much going on, because it took it did take a lot of concentration.
And was it cathartic? I don't know if it was joyful. I'm guessing once it's done and it's out there, and you kind of feel you've achieved a huge amount within the book. But even just getting the book together, it was 20 years of humming and hawing before you jumped in there. But I don't know whether there was a kind of feeling of shedding a skin, whether it was just another chapter.
There was a bit. You know what it was like, and I've used this analogy a few times. It was like going to like a filing cabinet of memories, a filing cabinet that you don't visit every day, every week, or every month, and just dipping in and picking things out of that filing cabinet. And some of those memories are joyful. Some of them are kind of lost a bit in the midst of time. But then you relive them and you freshen them up by concentrating back on. Maybe you get out some paperwork or something that's going to remind you some concrete souvenirs of a period. So some of that was certainly joyful. Some of it not so joyful, some was painful, and some of the kind of more tragic events in the family. But overall, it certainly was cathartic. I think, it was a bit of a roller coaster. Some things, some days you'd finish writing a chapter, Jesus Christ, there were some days. Talking about Denmark Street, I remember saying, reliving that and looking back on it, thinking, you know what? That's probably those 3 or 4 years in Denmark Street were probably. I'm right at the start. I'm learning my craft. We're probably, in retrospect, probably the best. Why? Because it was for like an aspiring football player getting signed by Man United.
Well, the hungry years are always.
And you're surrounded by people who are on the same wavelength. Other talented songwriters who'd come down from Manchester, Liverpool, Scotland, whatever it might be, and we're all chasing the dream. We all had obviously good talent, energy, vision. And not a nurse in our trousers, but we were all in Denmark Street. We were eating in La Gioconda, the little cafe, and boys on the telephone, on the payphone, talking very loud. Yeah, I need at least 500 advance for all that sort of stuff, because we were all living on scraps. But the great thing about that was we were all learning our trade, and a rising tide floats all boats. So if Greenaway and Cook next door and Mills Music, if they got a hit, we said, fucking great, well done, lads, you know. Because we thought, well, if they can get a hit, we can get a hit, you know.
There is I'm finding there's a rip in the space-time continuum. I'm at a point where I'm trying to figure out what year is this, because both the Beatles and the Stones have new records out in the last month. And there is a sense that because of the internet especially, music in regard to time, everything's available all at the same time. So you could go to your 60s and become obsessed with that as a 10-year-old, or you could be in the 80s, or I don't know if you find that exhilarating, whether it's you know, you've got your own particular story, so that's your kind of path, you know, where you're going, but it must be kind of titillating, the fact that all this music just keeps coming around. It keeps being part of our life.
Yeah, because quality endures, you know, of course. I mean, one thing I'm very grateful for is I was born when I was. I mean, I would hate like hell to be starting off in the music industry now. I mean, where does an aspiring songwriter learn his craft? Where does he have a contract with a music publisher who will sit him down every second Monday and go through the demos and tell him where he's going wrong? You need to do this, that, there. Put that there. And the publisher, in our case, Jimmy Phillips, who himself had been a successful songwriter, lyric writer, he wrote things like "Spile Though Your Heart Is Aching." Wow. Discovered Kennedy and Carr, who were the kind of Lennon McCartney of the war years. Lionel Bart. He was proper old school publisher, and he saw his job as mentoring his writers. You know, nobody does that anymore. Nobody does that anymore. So, I mean, one of the of all of my kids, I'm most grateful to God that none of them came to me at the age of 17 or 18 and said, "Dad, I want to be a singer-songwriter." You know, I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, no. Because it's we're in a whole different.
Well, we've got to the point now where it's AI really, and I know there's like the Swedish writing teams who've had more hits than the Beatles and Elvis and all that through Britney Spears and others, and they just turn them out. They're anonymous. They make a certain formula like Stock Aitken and Waterman, but on a much larger scale. And now AI will bring in that idea that you can pretty much generate all the little hit points that you should have, and yet I think ultimately it'll always be the human flaw that makes it.
Entirely. Yeah. I mean, you know, there's no machine who can really create. I mean, all you can do is kind of they can extract bits from there, here, there, wherever, and kind of put them all together. But you know, harking back to what I said about what makes a great song, longevity. None of these TikTok songs are going to be around in 20 years. Yeah. You know, because it's that instant gratification. So much so that the whole structure of a song, the basis of a song, if you see the song as like a creative piece of work, and as I've said about learning the structure, you know, you have an intro, it has to be an interesting intro. What does that mean? Well, something like pop it on the string, pop, 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 pop. Yeah. You're immediately creating an atmosphere. You know that because you've got 4 bars that you don't just vamp. They gotta work. Then you got a verse that builds you up towards a chorus, which is your big payoff, your hook. Now the intro's gone, the verse is gone, and you start with a hook. Why? Because they haven't got the attention span to wait for 16 bars for the hook. Yeah.
And we live in a strange time too, where someone like Taylor Swift, one of the biggest star of the last few years, and I do think it's wonderful and it's a great thing to have any kind of mania. I love the idea of Beatlemania, for every generation should have it. And yet I think something like her most famous song, we say, like Shake It Off, possibly won't have the same legs as Jolene. Like, she's not Dolly Parton. She's a wonderful success.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I keep it coming back to it. Longevity. You know, the great songs that have been around. You know, the great songwriters, even going back to like Rodgers and Hammerstein, Cole Porter, it's a glorious songs. Or even go back within the pop era, the Brill Building, you know, Lieber and Stoller, Man and Wheel, Goffin and King, they were churning out classic pop songs that are still around and still as relevant as ever. Yeah. Where are they coming from now? I don't know. I haven't heard any.
I know you've got somebody else to talk to now in a minute. So I'll just ask if you've got any kind of, you know, goals at this stage, having achieved so much and having a wonderful life and all that. I don't know whether you still get that itch to make something that's a little bit off menu, that you want to sort of say, what can I do next that would be satisfying for me as much as those who hear it?
Yeah, there's always a challenge, when I get to the stage where I think I'm treading water or sitting back congratulating myself and looking at all of these things, well then I am dead in the water, and that's not my style. I mean, look, that thing about the empty space for that's true, you know. Yeah. I mean, so each new project I approach it with the same enthusiasm as ever. And you know, we're already planning like what we're going to be doing next year in America and stuff like that. So you got to keep. For me, I got to keep busy. Yeah, the prospect of like retirement and staying home, reading the paper, and wearing slippers and drinking tea all day. No.
So,
not only would that drive me crazy, it'd drive Geraldine crazy as well. I'd probably be thrown out of the house.
So the next album's thrash metal, you were telling me.
Could well be. Who knows?